Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and warmly welcome for an excellent talk with us here, Frank Soqui.
Thank you. I'm going to practice dziękuję, dziękuję ci bardzo. Those are the polite words I know in Polish. I know other words, but those are the only polite ones I know. I'm actually both professionally and personally glad to be here. Professionally, yeah, because I get to talk to you about technology and Intel's a technology company and why we're so bullish on what's going on in esports. But personally as well, I'm sort of an old school gamer. I began playing video games in malls and arcades and things like that. And then, of course, I played Doom and Myst and Seventh Guest, 11th Hour. Then I moved up. I love playing Fallout 4 and games like that and some of the VR titles. But I've always considered myself a gamer, which is why I'm actually personally interested to be at events like this, because it feels like it connects me with my past. It connects me with I'm going to call them my children, but they're young adults now. And it connects me with the future where esports is going. So that's why I'm particularly excited to be here. I'll be talking a little bit about how I see some of the big shifts happening and how technology plays a role in what's going on. But let me begin first with, let's see, what is it that you see? In terms of the display, are they seeing the next slide? All right, as I get the slide going up, what I'm going to talk to you about is a little bit about the market and what's going on there. From a monthly viewer perspective, there is a ton of people watching esports today. There's 167 million people watching esports. And in just 3 years, that's going to grow by 65% of where it's at today to about 276 million people. And you think, well, that's a pretty big stinking number, but we're nowhere near being topped out there. If you think about it from the perspective of there's 2.2 billion gamers in the world, there's a lot of headroom there. With only 726 million people watching by 2022, that's roughly 13-14% of the total gamer market. So esports has a long growth cycle. There's as big as it is today, I believe it's going to keep growing. And just as a reminder, at the end I'm going to take some questions, but I'm going to start with one audience question first. How many of the people in the audience consider themselves gamers? Yeah, so higher than the average bear. It feels like, 2 hands, feels like about half of you, maybe slightly over half of you, have raised your hands, which I would have expected at something like an event like this. But I would submit that all of you are gamers. You're playing card games, board games, some of you play mind games. Everyone games. Gaming is a human condition. So sometimes when we say gaming, are you a gamer? I think it implies, am I playing on a phone or a console or a PC? But the fact of the matter is we're all gamers. So when we think about the market size is nearly as big as the entire population on the planet. We just have to get the rest in there to go participate in the more electronic type gaming. Now from an esports revenue perspective, this is not just about the number of viewers, but about money being made. If I just narrow it down to esports, and I don't include the broader gaming overall, it's going from 869 million today in esports revenues to about 3 billion, which is a 3.5x growth over a 3-year time frame. And I think you heard that Intel and ESL have invested another $100 million over the next 3 years to continue to support events like this, because it's critical to the gaming community, it's critical to the viewing community. It's good for us to stay connected with what gamers value, and it's good for us to stay connected to the industry that is enabling this to happen, because Intel can't do this all by itself. On top of all that, you may have heard the conversation go about comparing esports to real sports. At 276 million monthly viewers, that exceeds what the NFL can do. It exceeds traditional sports by huge leaps and bounds. And I would submit it's already rivaling entertainment. So when we think about gaming and esports, it's not just gaming and esports. This is the next generation wave of entertainment. And the real competition for esports and gaming is not other esports and games, but it's, are you going to spend your time watching Netflix and binging on movies, or are you going to spend your time gaming or viewing championships? And that's the real heart of what's kind of going on in the industry today. So let me talk a little bit about what's going on in the 3 shifts that I see going on that have to do with let me just move to it, that have to do with the 3 key areas here. It looks like we shifted away from my presentation again. Maybe it was user error. There we go. So let me talk about the 3 areas where I see some big shifts here. One is in the audience side, and it's my personal favorite. I'm going to drill down on that in just a second. It's very tempting to think of gaming and esports as about the gamer, about the player, and by and large it really is, but the audience is such a huge piece of what's going on here. I'm going to talk to you about shifts going on there. The second, I call it ecosystem or the industry. There are parallels with what's going on with real sports as well as some things that are very different in what's going on in that ecosystem, and we see some big shifts in where investment and spending is getting made. And of course, I will finally anchor on the big shifts that I see going on in technology to keep up with this amazing growth and why I think gaming and esports presents unique challenges and unique opportunities for people that provide technology. So let me start with my favorite one, which is in the audience and on engagement side of things. You know, from an audience perspective, it absolutely is about the game. And I'll use one example, Fortnite, and why I believe that's crucial. I'll use this as a proxy for other games that are in the industry right now. But Fortnite, I mean, it has like 125 million people playing or viewing. It made $300-ish million in revenue with a ton of audience people watching. It did some pretty cool things like it allowed customization, right? I can go build within that environment. Which goes to types of content where the player's not just being given something to use, but they can actually modify their experiences inside of that game. It's also free to play, and I'm laughing about the free to play side because I was talking to my wife the other day. She goes, "Hey, you know, you're playing these games. You just spent $100 last month." And I go, "But they're free to play." She goes, "They're not free to play. You just spent $100." Which is the kind of interesting angle behind free-to-play games. Getting people involved in a game so they love it, and then they start buying things inside of that game to make their experience better. On top of all that, I like Fortnite because it was a cross-platform play, right? It played on every device, which is another kind of key trend that you see going on in gaming and what's going on in esports. And they were doing really good about integrating what I would say pop culture. All the dance moves that come from like old school movies and things like that, but pop culture had a big play in what was going on there. And that's one thing, all of those elements kind of come together, not just for the gamer, but for the audience side of what's going on. Now the audience engagement, this is where I get a lot more bullish on things that could be emerging on the audience side. On the audience side, I want to make it more about how the audience interacts with that particular type of content. So think about this as a point of view. A lot of time I think every time now, when an audience is watching a stream, it is streamed from a particular point of view, and it's like a one-size-fits-all. Just watch the stream, and what we're streaming you should enjoy it. It's okay, but wouldn't you like better control over your point of view and the angle that you were viewing on? So there are technologies emerging to give audience more intimate control over their point of view. Or you can make it more interactive from an audience perspective if the audience member could become a non-player character. Oversimplistically, I'll use something like Arizona Sunshine. It's a zombie game. The zombies' responses are sort of like canned responses to player interaction. But what if the audience could become the non-player characters and challenge players in a much more fundamentally kind of different way? And a third example I want to give about audience interactivity would be, what if you could reward your favorite team or players with certain drops based on their performance or based on you bidding to be able to help them out, defeat the opposing team member? This is what I mean about audience interaction. Gaming, by definition, is natively digital, which is what real sports does not have today. You can't have that type of audience interactivity in real sports because it's just not natively digital. But what I do see is the audience trying to customize their experience and trying to interact inside of the game, even though they're actually not playing the game. That's why I'm particularly bullish on some of the shifts that I see going on the audience side of things. The second piece are shifts around what I would say ecosystem in the industry. By and large, advertisers are entering in this market in a giant way. There's many more different ways for them to advertise within the stream, within the game itself, offline, in promotional type elements. There's a lot of merch that getting spun up. Individual teams and players are coming up with their own types of sportswear and merchandise, very similar to real sports. And then there's new content all the time. I mean, You think about it from the context of H1Z1 or PUBG or Fortnite, and now Apex Legends. I mean, just coming out of nowhere, new types of content are spurring on a lot more new opportunities of what's going on in that ecosystem. And that fundamentally gets down to things like the viewership. A lot of those are in service because of the viewers that are being part of this experience, not just the gamers, which hooks me back around to what I said a little bit earlier. The second thing is some of the things that Intel's doing itself. We sponsor Overwatch League, we sponsor NBA 2K. We started working with the Olympics. We did a tournament around StarCraft 2. I wish I could tell you what's coming next. It's pretty exciting. But we are committed to these types of different leagues and championships and impacting things that have never been impacted before from esports. Now, let me talk a little bit about the technology side. You may have not heard it as a tone underlying everything I've been talking about so far, but to bring these things to life requires a ton of technology. It's really tempting to think about PCs or phones or consoles as that's what gaming's about, or maybe even the title itself. The way I think about gaming today is every game today is cloud-enabled. For me to be able to deliver an experience that scales, and when I say scale, we're saying 60 million viewers to over 100 million viewers. We're talking about online tournaments that appear globally. How do we deal with that from an infrastructure perspective? How do we have cloud work with edge devices? And when I say edge devices, like think about central office where you're landing cloud infrastructure, or through wireless networks, 4G, now with the advent of 5G, all the way down to the client side of things. How do you get that to happen in a way that there's no lag, it's instantly responsive, and I can deal with streams and recording and social media and you name it, tossed at this highly interactive gaming environment? That's what I mean about infrastructure, and it's evolving pretty rapidly. To take care of some of the latency issues, we as an industry are moving compute to be just from the data center closer and closer to where the PC and the client and the phones are to consume that information. Think of this as, oversimplistically, how does Netflix deliver movies to you that don't stutter or lag? Well, they basically cache things to the edge. We're not talking about highly interactive gaming that scales across geos with multiple players and multiple video streams, puts a tremendous amount of pressure on that infrastructure. A lot of that infrastructure to provide silicon and platform technology around. Another disruption going on is what I would say in the area of artificial intelligence. The ability to generate these very immersive worlds with a lot of detail is getting challenged. No one development team, no matter how many people you put on it, can actually develop something that is immersive and that can adapt as procedurally generated content. And what I mean by that is a developer can lay out a world, but what if that world could adapt and expand based on the player's capabilities or the audience's capabilities? So you need some artificial intelligence built behind that to generate these procedurally generated worlds. The other example I want to use is the non-player character example, where I said the audience could become the non-player character, where you can use artificial intelligence to animate non-player characters. Right now, they're very canned responses. What if these zombies that were attacking you could adapt to your style and provide you different levels of competitive challenges? The fourth element is really sort of in the training space. Artificial intelligence, if I'm playing a game, if I decided to enable that kind of capability, would monitor my gameplay, watch my keyboard, my strokes, watch the way I interact with the environment, trend that over time. If possible, sort of manage how it's collecting data about the rest of the players in the world and say, Frank, for you to be better, sorry, your left mouse button is just not as reactive as it should. You need to be practicing that better on the keyboard. Or you need to form these types of strategies to play better next time. So artificial intelligence can also help in terms of training. And the third way is, I would say, or the fourth way would be recommendation. I talked a little bit earlier about how if we can give the audience their own point of view, they can look anywhere inside of a game. Half the time, you don't even know what's going on. I mean, these things are very interactive, a lot of multiplayers. But what if the artificial intelligence engine could say, based on the gameplay I've seen over the last couple of months, I know some significant event's going to happen. Frank, I can take you to that location, and instead of you hunting around for it, would you like me to take you there now? So I see artificial intelligence playing a huge role in what's going on in gaming from both a gamer experience and an audience experience perspective. And then the last one, I would call it, we say human-machine interface, you could say human experience. What's going on here is that since the advent of compute, it's all been about how people interact with compute or how they interact with each other through compute. Yeah, we used to just have text once upon a time. And then there was a graphical user interface. And then there was touch. But things are speeding up a lot more in terms of that audience and that gamer experience. We're looking at things like eye tracking. How do you make eye tracking a control mechanism and part of the gameplay or part of the audience experience? How do you make things like voice and voice control and translation part of that social experience? I mean, I can say "dziękuję" or "gracias." I can name any language, and the other players who are not from my country may or may not understand what I'm saying. But what if language translation was built partly into what you were doing? Another tremendous workload in terms of the infrastructure, by the way. Or things like haptics. We talked a little bit earlier about the zombie control and interacting to my type of gameplay. Haptics would be like sensors, either gloves or sensors or some way of me sort of experiencing and interfacing a little bit better with the game. I've seen examples where my favorite one is a zombie game again. If you're playing against a bunch of zombies and your heart rate's kind of low, they can put higher levels of attack against you to put you under a little bit more stress to bring your heart rate up and challenge you a little bit more. Or the converse, if you're wearing some haptic device and you feel like your heart rate's a little too high, it might play down the zombies a little bit more. The other thing that's going on is that virtual presence. If I have haptics on and the other players have haptics on, and I'm touching the avatar in virtual space, they'll feel it on whatever they happen to be wearing. So this is just another way of making it much, much more immersive. And then, of course, thinking about this from the context of AR and VR, both from a viewer and a gamer experience. The more and more that we feel like we're inside of an environment and have control over it is exactly what I mean by that human experience. And almost finally, why is Intel so excited about this from a technology perspective? We supply silicon and platform capabilities across an entire spectrum that feeds these very interactive, highly latency sensitive, huge data set type workloads. They've got to be started. Some of these are started up in the cloud, cached to the edge devices. 5G is around the corner, which is going to unleash a lot more bandwidth and more quality of service. So people that want to do gaming on the go, whether it's through a phone or a laptop, are going to be able to do that. And then us, from a PC side of things, we increase performance there every single year. Because the gamers deserve to have the most responsive systems, not just for their gameplay, but to be able to simultaneously stream and capture their gameplay and do their social media. That's why we built Core i9. It used to be that people would have to dedicate one PC to streaming and one PC to playing the game. Now with the advent of Core i7 and especially Core i9, these multiple workloads can all be performed on one PC. So those are the key shifts that I see going on here. All of this is in service to the gamers. All of this is in service to the audience side of things. We're interested in those transformations because right now, I would say that the experience that the gamers and the audience has right now is by and large limited by the technology we're providing today. And some of the examples I gave you are the ways we're trying to break through as an industry to go get there. I've had a really good time telling you about what my perspective on this is. I engage the ecosystem broadly, whether it's developers or distributors or advertisers, but there's no way Intel can do it by itself. We're really proud that there's a healthy, vital ecosystem out there. And based on the marketing numbers I'm giving you and the growth rates, we don't really see any end in sight to this. I think people are trying to be fond of predicting, well, what is this going to tail off? Just remember what I said earlier. If all human beings are gamers, that's your total available market right there, and we're just scratching the surface. So thanks for letting me give you my point of view on this, and I'm happy to take questions if you have them.
Frank Soqui, everybody.
Yeah, dziękuję.
And any questions for Frank?
Oh, easy crowd.
Frank, you seem to have covered everything.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for your time.